Baltimore Ravens players have finally spoken in anonymous fashion on the team's struggles and other topics, and they did not hold back. And a lot of it lines up with what we've seen both on and off the field. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this Tuesday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in video form and audio form. We bring you everything you need to know about the Baltimore Ravens. And we have a jam-packed episode today and a very important episode today as a huge report, an article from the Baltimore Sun came out with anonymous players speaking out about the Baltimore Ravens and what's going on right now, ripping coaches, the roster, speaking out about frustrations. I mean, this is like the big one. This is the one that I think a lot of people were kind of waiting for in a sense. So we'll talk about what they had to say. We'll talk about different topics. And honestly, that'll probably span 2 segments. So we'll talk about the coaching stuff that they had to say, as well as stuff about the roster, how they can turn it around, and just why things have gotten this bad. We'll then also talk about in the final part of the show, there could be defensive help incoming. The Ravens tried out a couple of guys for the edge position, and we'll see if anything materializes there and what other moves the Ravens could make. So again, thank you for being here today on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, let's get into it. Let's do this thing. This is a long, extensive article, and it is by 4 people. It's by Brian Wacker, Josh Tolentino, Sam Cohen, and Sam Jane. So you know when there are like multiple people collaborating on one thing, you're like, oh, okay, this is it. This is the one. The title of the article is called "What's Wrong with the Ravens? Inside a Super Bowl Favorite Stunning Slide." Again, this coming from the Baltimore Sun and the 4 that I just mentioned. If you want to go look at it, be sure you check out the full article at the Baltimore Sun. And essentially, the Baltimore Sun spoke to a lot of people. Spoke to 25 sources. In fact, it was more than 25 sources in and around the Ravens. And they say it's to gain a better understanding of what's really wrong with the team, laden with all-pro and Pro Bowl talent. And I want to start off with the first thing in the article, the first quote from an anonymous veteran player. And again, I know that some people feel like being anonymous is just kind of like a cop-out. Like, why would you just say it with your name on there? And I see both sides of it, if we're being honest. Like, if players didn't speak anonymously, though, I don't think we'd get as much insight into it. So, whether anonymous or not, at least I appreciate players saying it. But I do know some people don't like the whole anonymous thing. So essentially, the Bills game is where we start here, where we know what happened in that Bills game. The Ravens were on track to win, and then there was a historic, epic collapse. And apparently the emotional toll that we've been talking about here on the show, we've mentioned it. I've had guests come on that have mentioned it. I've mentioned it. But the fact that Bills game, I think, really shifted things for this season. I think there was such a swing in the way the season could have gone. And it feels like in the building, that's also kind of the belief right now. And there was a quote from a veteran player who said, quote, "It was that Bills game that put a beating on us mentally, where it felt like everything was ending, even though it was the first game, when we have so much time to recover, such a long season, and we let that carry over." I mean, you can't do that, but it's hard. Everybody talks about, oh, you have to take it one game at a time, one game mentality, flush that game away if it's bad, and, move on to the next one. It's a hard thing to do just in life in general, right? Like if something bad happens, in certain situations, you can kind of just move on from it. But in other situations, you kind of remember it. It kind of sticks with you for a little bit. And So while it's important to have that mindset, it's not always possible to actually act on that and say, hey, that happened. Let's move on. So I think it's honestly kind of refreshing to hear it. It's not great to hear, obviously, but kind of just like, man, we're finally getting some insight. And that's the refreshing part of getting the insight into what's going on told by the actual players that are playing in the games. I think that's the difference where, we can speculate, hey, I feel like the Buffalo game's really impacting things. But that's just, that's me talking what I feel, or, people talking what they feel. But when you actually hear it from the players, that is just like, oh, okay, well, now we have different context to it. So again, the first game of the season having that level of an impact is not good. And, certainly kind of explains what's been going on over the course of the season so far. But I think the big thing that a lot of people took away from this article is players are not happy with the coaching. And this is something, again, we've talked about it a ton on this show. John Harbaugh and Zach Orr have been the two names that we have brought up the most here, and I've brought up the most, and guests on here have brought up the most. But that was not the coach. Those are not the coaches that got the brunt of the flack in this article by players. It was Todd Monken in the offense that actually really got a lot of criticism here. There was one player who said, it was an offensive player too, who said, quote, "It just feels different. I just don't feel like guys are being put in positions to succeed within the offense." One veteran offensive player told The Sun, aiming his criticism at offensive coordinator Todd Monken. And so the player was asked to clarify, and the player said, "It's freaking Lamar Jackson. How can you not find ways to have success with him? But I'm pretty sure if you put Patrick Mahomes out there for us right now, the same things would be happening." And again, so that's not the player saying that, oh, if Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, like put Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen out there, see how it is. It's that player saying like, the offensive system is not setting Lamar up for success. And you can take that in a lot of different ways, but you can take that in the way of the Ravens are asking Lamar to do too much and mask too many things on the offensive side of the ball, particularly offensive line play. Or, the play calls on early downs get too cute when Lamar's out there. And honestly, when Lamar's not out there, but, those play calls get too cute. Now you're asking Lamar Jackson to save the Ravens and say, oh, all right, now you're in a 3rd and 10 every other possession. Go out there, Lamar, and do your thing. That's not fair to put on anybody. So, and I think, look, whoever this is, this player is correct, where it's like you have Lamar Jackson. And I get that the offense is putting up points, or at least they were with Lamar out there for the most part, but the offense is still too inconsistent. Todd Monken's in his 3rd year with the Ravens, and it still feels like we're in the same holding pattern we were in during his 1st year, where it's the offense starts really fast and then just kind of falls off the face of the earth and doesn't do anything for the rest of the game, or they start really slow, they make a comeback, and it's either enough or not enough. It just feels like, yes, they've had games of just pure domination from start to finish. I'm not saying they haven't, but, hearing the players say this, and it being Todd Monken, out of the 3 coaches, Harbaugh, Orr, and Todd Monken being the one to get the most criticism is kind of shocking to me, in my opinion, at least. So, going on beyond those comments about Todd Monken, there were a lot of things that were also said about the system in terms of the players that are in it offensively. You have so many guys, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Rashod Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. I could go on, right? So you're like, man, you have all these weapons. We talked about it during the offseason. Like, it's truly a pick your poison offense. But one player is a longtime player, apparently on the offensive side of the ball, talked about the pros and cons of that, saying, quote, "It has pros and cons. You got so many guys you want to get the ball to, but then it can get confusing at times. You've got so many different personnels and plays for certain guys. I think at times it can be a little confusing." And even, beyond that, the way that the roster was constructed, which we'll get into a little bit in the second part of the show, you have a lot of younger players making mistakes, and you have a lot of younger players needing to step up in moments that, quite frankly, they're probably just not ready for. And again, we'll get to the roster construction part in the second part of the show in a few minutes here, but to just kind of finish up on Todd Monken and the the coaches, the thing that I think that kind of, I don't think it shocked me, but I think that not a lot of people were expecting something like this to come out from this article or from anonymous players, is you have a lot of things that the Ravens defensive players have said about Zach Orr, right? Just talking about the coaching staff and the players and how they get along with each other. I think there's tension in some areas, but not tension in other areas. And there was a comment from the defensive side of things, and we'll wrap it all up, once we talk about the specifics of this, where there are so many things that have to happen defensively to make everything successful. And when you have a lot of guys that are either inexperienced in the system due to injuries or whatnot, there are always opportunities for mistakes in those situations. And there was apparently something here where the Ravens, one player apparently recalled one of 4 successful 4th down conversions from the Chiefs game. The Ravens ran a play in practice that caught Orr's defense by surprise. They didn't stop it, and Kansas City ran that exact play. So Orr knew what was coming. He schemed against it, and the Chiefs still converted. And some player here, a defensive player, a veteran guy, said, quote, "It's hard for me to comprehend at times. The game is a different environment. If you go in there scared to make a mistake, you're probably going to make a mistake. When the poor results keep happening, it's always like the pressure is building and guys are more scared to make a mistake. Mistake's not going to kill you, but these little mistakes all over the place continuing, it's just like a snowball. It messes with you mentally." And another offensive player said it makes Zio look bad when he's calling the right stuff. So defensive Zach Orr, even from the offensive side of the ball, we know the defensive side of the ball, that those guys have stuck up for Zach Orr. Obviously, John Harbaugh has defended Zach Orr's job a ton of times, but there is kind of a difference here in terms of how Todd Monken is kind of being talked about here versus how Zach Orr is being talked about here. And I thought that was very interesting because, I thought there would be, look, there's obviously frustration about the defense, and that's clear in this article as well. But, Ravens players were essentially kind of ripping Todd Monken and, not so much on Zach Orr. So that was one of the interesting trends I thought that we saw from the article. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the roster construction because a lot of Ravens players had a lot of things to say about that. And also there were some truths revealed about what's going on in that Ravens locker room that kind of wild. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way here on Locked On Ravens.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
And this show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. Again, appreciate everybody for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in both video form and audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Of course, we have the regular show here Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern time, but we also have bonus episodes on the weekend when the headlines permit. We have Locked on Ravens watch-alongs where you can watch the games with me, react play-by-play here, and then we also have instant reaction shows after the games as well as after every piece of Ravens big news. We have Locked on Ravens Squad Show with myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. That is twice per week, Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and then after games. And we just have so much content and coverage here on Locked on Ravens, so thank you for being a part of the journey. You're actually in the video side of things, we're just about 100 subscribers away from 16,000, which is absolutely incredible. And then the audio side of things, we're growing each and every single day. But let's move on and continue talking about this crazy, detailed, anonymous, pretty much report from the Baltimore Sun with anonymous player insights that really was a tell-all. I mean, that there was nothing held back here, it felt like, and players speaking their minds. Just to kind of wrap up on the coaching side of things before diving into the roster construction and even some other things in the locker room that are going on. There was one player, a veteran offensive player, that said, and talked about the consistency of the coaching staff. They said, quote, 3 years ago, we had a new OC, new DC. Teams didn't have any film on us. Now they've seen everything that we've done, so we have to be more creative and put guys in spaces to succeed. So, I mean, look, I agree with the fact that the Ravens haven't been putting guys in the right places to succeed so far this season for a lot of this. I think Derrick Henry on the offensive side of the ball is a big player who I'd say probably is not getting put in a lot of those positions because of the fact that they're not even putting him in those positions in the first. They're not putting him in any positions on some of these plays. Defensively, I think that they could have used Kyle Hamilton a little better. But, I also think that, the film stuff I get, and it honestly does have some truth behind it. I mean, if you want a little proof of that, you can look at Lamar Jackson versus NFC teams, especially earlier in his career where, they had never played Lamar Jackson. The Steelers and the Browns and the Bengals, although Lamar loves playing the Browns and the Bengals. But for the Steelers, a team in the AFC North who plays Lamar twice, maybe 3 times a season, there's a lot of film. But NFC teams, they're not playing Lamar nearly as much. And they're going to go out there and like, oh, hey, we saw Lamar on film. Yeah, we know he's fast. And then it's just a whole nother level when you play him on the field. So I get it. Like, you need to get more creative and not just run the same things over and over again, add more wrinkles. But I mean, the Ravens had a whole offseason to do that, and I think that's, a reflection of what's going on with the coaching staff. And it's kind of tough to look at what's going on right now. And you can kind of see, especially on some situations offensively, particularly when the Ravens are running, whether it be on early downs or after a poor play, you can just see like 9 guys flying to Derrick Henry. Like they're sniffing plays out, which to me, you cannot be that predictable. And it feels like the Ravens, they try to play with organized chaos, but it just ends up being chaos. They end up outsmarting themselves offensively and defensively. I'd rather have a bland team that goes down there and just dominates as opposed to a team that, runs all these fun looking crazy plays and, they kind of just outsmart themselves. So that was interesting. But then what I mentioned in the first part of the show about the youth on this roster, that to me was really interesting when talking about how the roster was constructed. We know how it was constructed. And, it's kind of tough when you do have a lot of that youth and you're a contender, right? It's different when you're a team that, you don't have expectations and you're looking to see growth or that's different. But when you're a team that's looking to compete for a Super Bowl, young players are going to make mistakes, but those mistakes can cost you a game. It can cost you seeding. It can cost you, the chance at a Super Bowl. And the Ravens have so many young guys playing right now. Injuries are a factor as to why in some cases, but, they're also relying on other guys as well that are young or haven't proven themselves yet. And so one offensive player said, quote, we got a lot of young guys around here. They haven't been around to build up battle scars. So it may get to them mentally, emotionally in their head. Linemen, we have a lot of young guys, special teams, especially on defense right now. You're already going to have nerves regardless. And then if things aren't going well, you're going to have the outside noise. It's a lot stacked up against you. I think that that's the difference from the past. We had more mature teams. And look, I think Eric DeCosta has done a lot of great things as the Ravens general manager. He's made a lot of great moves as the Ravens general manager. This offseason, there were positions, and I've been very vocal about those positions, the guard position being the main one, but there are others that he just cheaped out on, in my opinion. And it's okay to say that, right? Nobody's perfect, but the problem is that it's stuff that's been going on. The Ravens invest an absurd amount of resources into their secondary. They just traded for a guy in their secondary. They traded an edge rusher for a safety. They have multiple guys in that secondary signed to $100 million contracts. Probably going to have another one with Nate Wiggins in a couple of years. And, they invest a ton of money there, but then there's not as much money invested at wide receiver, at guard. Sometimes you look at that edge position. There's not a lot of money invested there right now. So, you have to look at that as well. And look, the Ravens let both Matt Judon and Zadarius Smith walk when I thought they're going to be able to re-sign at least one of them, but they didn't. The Ravens didn't want to pay up that money, but they paid up money in the secondary. It needs to be a little more balanced there, in my opinion. A great secondary is important, but, you also have to have a pass rush to match. And, not every year you're going to hit. Like Eric DeCosta in 2023 hit on almost every single veteran signing he made, literally almost every single one. But, it doesn't always happen that way. And if you get too reliant on that or younger players, it's going to cause you some issues. So the way the roster was built, we know how it was built. Lamar Jackson, he's on a huge deal. You're going to have to sacrifice at certain positions. I get that, and I understand it. But, there was a part in this article here. It says, quote, when general manager Eric DeCosta pieced the roster together in the offseason, he couldn't have imagined what it would look like before midseason, and talked about how there were 5 rookies part of the opening lineup. And one high-level NFL executive said, quote, when a contender has that many young players and rookies forced into real roles that fast, it's hard to mask. And, Malaki Starks has talked about how he's kind of overthinking things. And, you just kind of wonder, like, okay, how can the Ravens bounce back from this? How can they essentially become united again? Because it doesn't feel like they are right now. And there's a section here in the article that says, quote, get back to having fun. And the Ravens, this is a very interesting thing that they did. So I'm going to read this out a little bit. Jordan Stout, this is where it happened the week leading up to September 28th, that loss to the Chiefs. He posted an Instagram story of Lamar sitting in front of a video game console, controller in hand. The caption was hard at work, just a little friendly jab apparently. But, they have a lot of things in that locker room that essentially help pass the time and help camaraderie, game consoles, ping pong, etc. The Ravens made a decision to take all of that out of the locker room. It says here, quote, the Ravens promptly removed several recreational staples from the locker room, including the basketball hoop near Jackson and Flowers stalls, the ping pong table that the rookies often battled on, the once popular cornhole boards, and the video game consoles. Apparently, multiple players told the Baltimore Sun that decision came from the coaching staff, who wanted to strip away distractions and have the team fully locked in amid its disappointing start. It's not the first time they've done it either, apparently. In previous seasons, when the Ravens stumbled early, coaches leaned on similar tactics, dialing back locker room freedoms in an effort to boost focus and reset the work environment. Now, the next paragraph here is important. It says, quote, from a player perspective, the recreational activities helped break up long days and allowed the locker room to breathe and relax, even for a moment, from an atmosphere that demands intense daily focus. Since the removal of the activities, the Ravens have lost 2 more games, extending their season-long losing streak to 4. We figured it out. The Ravens losing was because of ping pong. I can't believe it was that simple. I can't believe it was ping pong the whole time. Now, I'm obviously kidding. This feels like the Ravens have been grounded. Like the players have been grounded. I don't think this is correct. I don't think this is right. It's not the reason the Ravens are losing. I think it honestly has probably helped a lot of these players deal with pretty negative emotions from a pretty negative season. And, like the article stated, hey, guess what? You lost 2 more games after you did that. It's just, it feels tone deaf to me, in my opinion. it shouldn't be that way. And I get they've done it before, but that to me is not the way to do it. It's not a ping pong table's fault or a basketball hoops fault that the Ravens are losing these games the way that they are, or that the season has gone the way that it has. I get that you need to be locked in. And I think that, how much is a video game that you're playing in the locker room after practice, really distracting you from what's going on and getting ready for the game. I think there's a lot more going on. I think that all that is very, very far down on the totem pole of what actually needs to happen or what actually needs to be fixed. So crazy. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is a big time deal. This article, anonymous players ripping coaches, the roster, and kind of revealing this insight into the locker room doesn't happen very often. So really good work from the Baltimore Sun. And hopefully the Ravens can figure all this stuff out, because as I've said many, many times, all the stuff going on off of the field, you need to figure out that first, because that is obviously having a direct correlation of what's going on the field. But coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk about if defensive help is incoming for this Baltimore Ravens team. So stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. Makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. The Ravens, they have a huge game against the Chicago Bears in week number 8. They need this win super, super badly. Right now on FanDuel, the Ravens at home are 6.5-point favorites. So maybe you like the Bears as the road underdog in this one. Maybe you like the Ravens as the home favorite. Either way, you have got to get over to FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still talking Ravens football with you here, as we do 5 days a week plus more on Locked On Ravens. Really appreciate everybody being here. Be sure again to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form. And speaking of audio form, just for a second here, the show came out a couple hours late yesterday because of the crazy global outage that was going on. It affected the uploading software that we use. It affected my ability to make thumbnails, the ability to even make the background for the show. So dealing with a lot there. It impacted everybody on the network essentially. So I apologize for that delay, but it got out about 8 a.m. So be sure, if you haven't checked out that, to do that, because the show, I know some people are probably looking at 6 a.m. Hey, where's the show? Where's the show? But we got it out at 8 a.m. Reasons beyond my control. So I do apologize for that. But you missed it and wondering where it was, if you're a part of the early morning crew in audio form, then that's what happened. So technology is not my friend, and we're still going strong here. Again, I've never missed an episode of the show. This is episode today 1622 consecutively for me. I have never missed an episode of this show, so I wasn't gonna let an outage change that. And of course, in video form, that luckily was able to come out on time. Let's now dive into some defensive help that could potentially be incoming for this Baltimore Ravens team. Now, I don't know if they're going to sign either of these guys, but they're certainly looking. We've talked about the reports. Ian Rappaport saying that the Ravens are calling around the league for defensive help. There have obviously been rumblings around the Ravens and what they could do to, bolster their edge room, the trenches on the defensive line. Obviously, offensive line is another one people are potentially looking at. But the Ravens had 2 players in for visits on Monday, and Carl Lawson and Jesse Luketa. Now, Lawson, higher profile guy here. Obviously, spent the first 4 years of his career with the Bengals. He was a 4th-round pick for them in 2017. Right now, he is 30 years old. He put together some solid years in Cincinnati. Started his rookie year off with 8.5 sacks, had 5 sacks and 5.5 sacks in the last 2 years of that Bengals deal. Then he signed a big money deal with the Jets, had 7 sacks in his first season. It was looking like a good signing, but then played in just 6 games the next year. Ended up going to Dallas for last season. He put together a 5-sack year for them. I wouldn't be mad at this at all. I mean, Carl Lawson injuries have somewhat followed him over the course of his career to an extent in certain seasons. But I think, at this point, if you're looking on the free agent market, there's not really a lot out there at this moment. So I think that I'd be okay with Lawson coming in 32 career sacks in 89 games, 4 forced fumbles. Lucetta is more of an unproven player. He's someone that last year with Arizona in 2024, he had 3 sacks. Those are the only 3 sacks of his 3-year career. And that's kind of like, look, let's go back to the article. Let's go back to the Baltimore Sun article we just talked about. The Ravens don't need more projects or inexperienced players. They need veterans who have been there and done that, have literal production that is on the page. You can say, hey, this guy's done that. Those are the types of players you need. I think the Ravens need to be favoring veterans on the free agent market, not trading for projects, not doing any of that. Make sure you get guys in here if you really want to compete that are going to be able to use their experience to their advantage. And so that obviously relates to the trade market as well, right? Where you're going to want to get in guys with production, not guys that are cool projects to, maybe try to see what they can do. Now, the trade market, the Ravens wouldn't be buyers and then trade for a project, but you still have guys out there that I think fit the Ravens price range. At this point, again, the Ravens have a top 5, top 10 pick. I'm not trading that pick, first round, even in the second round. I think that pick's too valuable. But if you can package together like a 3rd and a 5th for someone, is that Kayvon Thibodeau? Is that Jalen Phillips? Can you maybe do a 4th and a 5th? I just don't think the Ravens need 5 5th-round picks this year, which is what they're projected to get. 2 comp picks for McCary and Stevens, as well as the 3 picks they have, 2 via trade and then their own 5th-round pick. So you don't need all that. Again, that's part of the problem is the Ravens have relied so much on their youth in recent seasons here. And I get it because you do need to be able to hit on those guys. But the problem is that you're keeping guys on the roster and drafting guys high up that, are either never going to see the field or taking up a spot from a veteran or taking up playing time from a veteran that could help you win now. This window isn't like, Lamar's a rookie and you have 15 years with Lamar. Lamar's going to be 29 at the end of this season. You really need to start looking at, all right, winning a Super Bowl. Let's do this thing. They've had 3 great opportunities. Lamar is not old by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying that either, but you do need to kind of be like, okay, got to kind of move along here. And while guys have certainly developed alongside Lamar, which was the best path, now it's about just getting guys in here that can help you win now. I mean, if Q was here, he'd be saying now, over and over again, which, I think it's hilarious and fun that, Q and I have those conversations, but we're being serious in the fact that we're saying look, this is a win now team. And when you have 6 4th-rounders coming in or 5 5th-rounders coming in or whatever it may be, I get injuries again have played a factor in why the Ravens are playing so many guys this year, at least rookies in these instances. But, they also could just sign vets in those spots too, where they drafted, 10 rookies this past year and could have even 11. I can't even remember the exact number, but it was, a high amount of draft picks. I said, look, this rookie class, not everybody's going to make the roster. Lo and behold, was not the case. So I think that the Ravens, you need to be able to make your assets work for you. I think Eric DeCosta has done a good job of that over the course of his time as the Ravens general manager, but I think he needs to get even more aggressive in doing so and not just trading away 1 5th-round pick. Go ahead and package a couple of those things up with a 4th-rounder and go get somebody into this team that can help you win now. So can't tell. The Ravens need to win now. And that, with Lamar Jackson, you're always going to have a shot. He can raise, he's the high tide that raises all ships, or at least one of them, as Q says. But in my opinion, they need to make a move or two, because while there is just the slightest of that door being cracked, that crack is super, super slight. You need to take advantage of any sliver of competitive room you have with Lamar Jackson on this football team. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form as well for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be back here with more Ravens content, so be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.